Hey, Pastor. Dr. Steve Hall here with MinistryOasis.com, hoping to help ministers navigate through these crazy times in an already soul-destroying profession. And I mean that. When I talk about soul-destroying profession, I mean that, because so many pastors are seeking to gain the whole world of ministry, and at the same time, many of them feel like they're losing touch with their soul. This is the reality of the uniqueness and danger of professional ministry, and it's the reason why Ministry Oasis exists. It exists for pastors who are parched in their soul. They don't know why they're so dry. And the reason why is because ministry is incredibly unique and incredibly dangerous at the most typical times. But in this Corona crazy context, it's even more so unique and dangerous. And that's why we're doing these videos. That's why I talked about 2 videos ago, the idea of recognition, to recognize where you are and what's going on around you, not only in typical ministry, but at a time of crisis. And then I talked about in the last video, prevention, how to prevent these issues of burnout and stress that are moving into unhealth and danger. So we talked about that in the last video regarding prevention. In this video, we're going to talk about intervention. Because pastoring is unique and dangerous for all of the areas that we talked about in previous videos. Now, in addition to the 24/7 marginlessness of whole family ministry, the whole family is on 24/7 when it comes to ministry. Think of you being a first responder. And in this time of crisis, perhaps more so than ever. Typically, a pastor is indeed a first responder. When a firefighter or a police are given a 911 call, it's because something terrible has happened. Often, when a pastor receives a phone call, it's because something terrible has happened. A terminal diagnosis has been given. Some spouse has found out about infidelity and a marriage is falling apart. A child is incarcerated. Perhaps there's a death in the family on an automobile accident. Guess who's called right after the fire department or the police? Usually the pastor. I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a situation as the other typical classic first responders have been walking into that same situation. I've been arriving at scenes of death at the same time the police or the firefighters are arriving at the scenes of death. Pastor, you are a first responder, and because you are absorbing all of the stress that a normal, typical, classic first responder is absorbing. The same stress that a police officer experiences and absorbs in an acute stress situation is the same stress that you absorb when you're called to it. But guess what? That police officer or firefighter doesn't have a personal relationship with the person they're responding to. But you do. Every single first responder call for a pastor is personal. That triples the stress of what's going on in that acute moment. And when you show up because a hysterical spouse has called you that their loved one just passed away in their presence, and right now they're in the floor, and you show up when police and firefighters are showing up, you not only know that person who's hysterical in grief right now, you know the person that died. That's not the case with a police officer or a firefighter. So your stress, pastor, is unique and more dangerous than any other first responder's stress in that moment. And once that acute stress is over, once the pronouncement of death has been made, basically the firefighters and police pack up and go home. They don't know that person. They're not going to continue responding to that person, but who is? You, the pastor. Often I've been in homes where the firefighter and the police have left, and I sat and waited for the coroner or for the funeral home to show up and take the body. That's me. Not just being a first responder, but being an enduring responder. Pastor, you are not just a first responder, you are an enduring responder. No police officer has to prepare for the funeral of that person that died. No firefighter has to continue navigating the grief of that family for the next year. No, but you do, Pastor, and many times you're doing it with many different people. That's not the case with a classic first responder. So do not for a moment imagine that somehow, some way, you're not a first responder. And as a first responder, you will absorb the secondary stress of everything that everyone else is experiencing. That person that lost a loved one, you're absorbing their stress. That family that's dealing with the fallout from an incarceration or from infidelity and a marriage breakup, you are feeling the stress. You are absorbing the stress. That's called, in the psychology business, secondary or vicarious stress. And it can lead to dramatic negative results for the pastor if they don't recognize it, if they don't prevent, and sometimes it gets to the place where intervention is necessary. Lots more of this is on ministryoasis.com, but I need to emphasize the reality that PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is real for the pastor as much as it is for the first responder. But in addition to all the typical first responder trauma that a pastor endures, and all of the enduring stress of a pastor being the enduring responder to all of those issues, ministry is unique and dangerous even over and above and around, behind and below, and all of it. Ministry is unique and dangerous. Let me explain. As a pastor, have you ever, in addition to all of those first responder experiences, have you ever felt the own stress when you've been ambushed by a person in your church? Of course, I don't mean physically, but I mean, have you ever been in a board meeting and all of a sudden somebody come out of nowhere and undermine you or attack you in some way? Anybody ever came up after a sermon and let you have it? Most pastors have. That is a unique and dangerous traumatic experience. Have you ever taken friendly fire when been betrayed by someone in your church whom you thought was faithful to you? You were friends with, you went on vacation with, you spent time praying, you baptized their kid, and the next thing you know, they turn around and they are like a sniper trying to take you out. That is traumatic. Pastor, have you ever been undermined by someone in your church? You're doing good. You're trying to do the best you can. You're providing a place of spiritual nurture. You're running a soul hospital for people. And all of a sudden, you're being undermined by the very people that you are helping. That is traumatic. Have you ever had someone in your church threaten your physical or emotional health and well-being, or that of your family? That is a unique and dangerous reality of ministry, in addition to all the first responder stuff. What about your own financial security being threatened by someone in your church? I've heard from many pastors and experienced it myself when people came up to me and said, well, you know, Pastor, I'm one of your best givers, and if I pull out, that will affect you. As a leveraging attempt to get me to do what they want. That feels traumatic. What about your integrity being called into question? Is that a reality for you as well? These things happen to pastors over and over and over again, and they mark the uniqueness and danger of ministry. These are common experiences for ministry, and they provoke traumatizing stress responses. Now, as a result of these common ministry stressors that I just shared with you, on top of all of the first responder realities, let's take stock. Have you ever, as a result of all of these collective traumas, have you ever found yourself isolating or avoiding relational connections in church? Have you ever experienced noticeable changes in your eating, your mood, your motivation? You don't necessarily seem interested in things that you previously were interested in. Have you ever been hyper vigilant about protecting yourself or your family from further trauma because you're afraid of what might happen to them or to you? Have you found it hard to sleep at times because you're consistently thinking about church turmoil? I'm not talking about just because of the enduring responder grief issue with that family that lost their loved one. I'm talking about these ambush attacks and these undermining attacks and this threatening of your financial integrity or any of the. Have you ever found it hard to sleep because you keep thinking like this? Have you had trouble concentrating because of traumatic church experiences? Have you experienced spikes in fear or anxiety when you see certain people in person? Or in the store, you turn down the frozen food aisle and you're shocked to see a person whom you are in conflict with at church. And oh my goodness, it just spikes your anxiety. What about when somebody calls on your caller ID and you're like, oh, you don't want to take the call. All of a sudden you feel anxious, your stomach gets tight. You feel that drop in your chest or that stimulation of adrenaline. Goodness. What about this? Do you ever feel dread for Sundays because you're fearing that you're going to be attacked again or that your family's going to be attacked or hurt? What about feeling depressed or cynical? Often pastors find themselves falling into these routines. Have you ever generally just been so exhausted that you just can never turn ministry off? You know what that's like. If you're experiencing noticeable intensification of 4 or more of the things that I just went through, you're likely beyond the point of recognizing, beyond the point of preventing. You're likely at the place where you need intervention because you're not just experiencing PTSD as a first responder. Because of all of these uniquenesses and dangers I just highlighted, you're actually experiencing PTSP. PTSP is unique to pastoring. It has all of the same dimensions and symptoms as clinical PTSD because much of what we experience as pastors compounds the normal stress of ministry. I say normal to ministry, it's unique to all other professions, but ministry is unique and dangerous, and you may be experiencing post-traumatic stress pastoring. Now, is that a clinical diagnosis? No, that's me as a former clinician recognizing the linkage to post-traumatic stress disorder and uniquely coining the phrase post-traumatic stress pastoring. For more on PTSP, I've got loads of resources on ministryoasis.com that you can check out and take advantage of. Now, on top of the first responder reality, the common uniquenesses and dangers of ministry, on top of all of that is piling the current corona crisis and all of its Corona-ffects, as I'm calling them. Let's first look at our natural acute stress experiences because we, as a human being, we're a part of the human race. And as a human race right now, we are all collectively experiencing a global traumatic stress event with danger all around. And that danger all around at this moment is the coronavirus. We can't see that which we're fighting against, that which we're trying to avoid, that which we are in danger of, which makes it far more intense right now as a human race globally. We're all in this together. I want to walk you through some slides that take us through the typical natural human stress response experience. So let's take a walk through these slides. There are 3 stages of a typical stress response. First of all, the alert of danger. This redirects our attention to the thing that we may consider dangerous. We're not sure yet it's danger, but we are alerted to it. That happened about a month and a half ago. for our corona crisis. And then we have a stress response. As the information begins to come in, as we synthesize what we're hearing and experiencing and feeling and seeing, smelling, tasting, whatever, our stress response is increasing and the body begins to release cortisol into our system. And then all of a sudden, we recognize, oh my goodness, this is a legitimate danger. And in the stress response, at that moment when we recognize officially that this is a dangerous experience, we move from stress to distress. And cortisol and adrenaline are pumped into our bodies. And that gives us the strength, the focus, the capacity to engage, fight, or flight. That's the typical way a normal stress response occurs. Now here's the deal. Cortisol and adrenaline are what we would consider the negative neurotransmitters and or hormones that release into our body at times of negative experience where we're stressed and then distressed. What we lose in that is serotonin and dopamine. Serotonin and dopamine are the really positive, euphoric, good-feeling neurotransmitters and hormones that flood into our body at times of health and well-being and peace and serenity. At times when we're stressed or distressed, cortisol overtakes serotonin and dopamine and decreases their levels. And these pairs do not play well together. They are in tension with each other. So let's take a look at it with regard to a balancing act. Brain chemistry balance is critical for overall health and well-being. Now, what we see on the left-hand side of this slide is an unhealthy brain imbalance. Now, that's not unusual during stress response. In fact, it's normal. We need an uptick, an upwelling of cortisol and adrenaline to keep us safe. But when that happens, serotonin and dopamine diminish. That's not unusual. The problem is when we sustain that unhealthy balance for long periods of time. So when you, pastor, are in long periods of sustained distress, you are in danger. What's a sustained period of time, Steve? I would say 2 weeks. And how many weeks are we in this corona crisis? We need to be paying serious attention to our own brain chemistry balance and recognize that you may not be feeling unhealthy, depressed, down. You may not be having some of these Corona-ffects take over because somehow you're not reading and praying enough. Somehow you're not a strong enough leader. Somehow you're not as awesome as all the other great leaders out there and you're succumbing to... It's because we all, at the moment, are experiencing a sustained and unhealthy imbalance of cortisol and adrenaline in our body. Every time we watch the news cycle, we uptick in cortisol and adrenaline. Every time we have to run out for bread or milk at this time, we have an uptick in cortisol and adrenaline and a downturn in serotonin and dopamine. What's the appropriate balance? When cortisol and adrenaline comes down and serotonin and dopamine go back up. The problem is when we don't have good preventative rhythms in our life, we sustain the unhealthy imbalance and we don't get to the healthy counterbalance. That's why I talk to you so strongly about the preventative measures. It's to counteract cortisol and adrenaline and give place and rise to serotonin and dopamine in our bodies. That's why our physiology is so connected to the realities of our soul health and our mental and emotional health. Now, this corona crisis, it is the real deal for serious stress reactions in pastors requiring intervention. The following are potential serious corona-ffects that you may be experiencing. And if you've got a number of these going on, you need to be thinking about intervention. Let's take a look at those. Potentially serious corona-ffects. They would be disruptions in sleep. If you are having a hard time going to sleep, and that's unusual, or you're going to sleep and waking up and can't get back to sleep, and that's typically unusual, this is potentially a serious corona effect. If your eating has been disrupted, that could be a serious corona effect. I'm not talking about you kind of like, or you're eating more brownies and cookies now than you used to, but if your diet process, if your rhythm of eating is off, like you're not eating, you're binge eating, all of these things can point to some serious intervention needs. Next, mood. What about your mood? Is it down? Is it super high? What's going on right now in your mood? Take time to wonder about that, to sit and assess and take internal stock of what's going on. What about disruptions in pleasurable experiences? Anhedonia is actually a symptom of a serious issue when we no longer have interest in things we used to have interest in. Like I used to like to take walks with my wife. Now I don't care. I'm just sitting on the couch watching the news cycle again. That could be a serious corona effect. What about hypervigilance? Can you not turn it off? Are you just spinning constantly? Can you not shut your mind down? Can you not just turn it off for a minute? That's hypervigilance to an acute danger that you're experiencing. What about irritableness? Irritableness that other people are recognizing. Hey, what's up with you? You are so much more irritable than you normally are. That's a good indicator that you could be experiencing a corona effect. What about fatigue? You're just more tired than you normally are. You can't seem to get any energy going. It's important to note. What about hygiene? Are you keeping up with it? Are you washing your clothes? Or, are you taking showers? Are you fixing your hair? Are you shaving? Are you brushing your teeth normally? These are important factors to wonder about. Oh, hey, whoa. I've been social distancing and also shower distancing. Oh my goodness. Maybe that means, it does mean something. What about the corona effect of daily function? Are you staying up with your bills? Are you putting the trash out? Are you taking care of the dog? Are you keeping up with daily function, or has there been disruption there? What about difficulty thinking or concentrating? Those disruptions could be a serious corona effect. Now, let me take a moment here and remind you that all of the uniquenesses and dangers that you're experiencing as a typical pastor are also being experienced by your spouse as well. So I want to tell you how important it is to recognize right now that your ministry spouse is just as much a part of your ministry and its stress and its uniqueness and its danger than you are, as you are. In fact, the reason your spouse is in ministry is likely because they're married to you. Very few spouses of ministers have a Damascus Road kind of calling on their own life. Many of them would not be in ministry if it wasn't for being married to you. That's not a bad thing. They relish the fact that they're called to be your helpmeet. They relish the fact that they can contribute to ministry. They love being a ministry spouse. However, it can be taxing, just as much or more so than you, Pastor. And so I want to call your attention to the reality that on Monday, when you want to quit, and the Lord reminds you of that Damascus Road calling, and you say, no, Lord, I remember when you called me, and I'm going to stay faithful to that calling. When your spouse wakes up on Monday and they're experiencing all the stress and disappointment or struggle that you are, what do they have to anchor themselves in? Their marriage to you. So I want to encourage you to recognize that spouses of ministers are exceptionally stressed as you are, especially during this time. I want to let you know that recently I heard Sam Chan, Dr. Sam Chan, a Christian leadership expert, say this at a conference: the loneliest person in the world is the pastor's wife. The loneliest person in the world is the pastor's wife. Now listen, there are lots of resources I've got available on ministryoasis.com. Again, all of them are free. This is not about making money or getting gigs or anything like that. This is about you accessing good resources for you and your spouse. There's lots of resources dedicated to ministry spouses and the impact that all of this stress is having on them at ministryoasis.com. So if you and or your spouse have more than 5 of those Corona-ffects that have been disrupted, you and or them are likely in need of intervention. And so I'm going to share with you some interventions that will make sense right now. No little adjustment will do. No little extra daily devotional is going to make a difference when you've moved from prevention into intervention. No little adjustment will do. You are experiencing, your spouse is possibly experiencing, a genuine psychophysiological disruption. And that means you need to take action. You are way past praying a little longer. You are way past watching another Catalyst leadership video. You are way past reading another outreach article. You've got to take appropriate action for the sake of your own soul and the soul of your spouse and family. And that will bless your church, because a healthy minister means a healthy ministry. Let's take note of the following. So what's a minister to do if they find themselves in need of an intervention? Number 1, they get a full general medical checkup. This is critical because a physical doctor will be able to recognize whether or not you've got an underlying condition that may be causing these Corona-ffects. These Corona-ffects could be caused by other things, physiological related. So you need to make sure you check in for a general medical checkup, manage your medication well, get a full assessment as to what's going on to make sure that you can rule out most everything else, and then you know, yeah, this is related to the normal uniqueness and danger of ministry and the extra stress of this corona crisis right now. Next would be take the clergy burnout survey. You and your spouse go on ministryoasis.com, click resources, and click clergy burnout survey. Take it, and it'll give you a good understanding of where you are if you answer honestly. Next, immediate implementation of those preventative measures. If you haven't done many of them, access that video, that second video on prevention, and activate those renewal zones and activate those preventative measures. And that will help in the intervention process. Next, medicine is your friend, not your fixer. Medicine is your friend, not your fixer. Medicine will take the edge off. Your doctor may say, you're right, you are experiencing some significant psychophysiological disturbances. So how about an antidepressant? How about an anti-anxiety medication? I say take it. Not as your fixer, but as something to take the edge off to help you do good work right now. It is not an indication of failure, any more than blood pressure medicine would be an indication of failure. Taking an antidepressant is the same as taking anti-inflammatory. The stress and uniqueness and danger of your role has brought you to this place. You are not too weak that you couldn't handle it, and now you're dealing with depression or anxiety. That's not the case. You need to accept the medicine and let it take the edge off. But remember, it's not your fixer. What's your fixer ultimately? Your fixer is Christ and counseling. If you're in a position where you need intervention, Christ and counseling is your answer right now. And I want to encourage you to take the step of engaging those great healthy soul practices, step it up, but get counseling also. The Bible tells us we should carry our own load. Yes, but it also tells us we should carry one another's burdens. Pastor, you're always busy carrying everybody else's burden. It's time to let somebody carry yours. Get with a counselor. Let them help you walk through the process, and it will bless your life. It'll save your soul and your family from burnout and eventual destruction. Please take this seriously. Now, the following slides that I'm going to share with you are some resources found at ministryoasis.com and that you can access either through that website or going to them directly. Let's take a look at some of them. MinistryOasis.com. This is the homepage that you'll land on. There's all kinds of resources available there. These are some apps that you'll be able to access through your Google Play or your App Store through iPhone. These are fantastic opportunities for you to feed your soul with good, nourishing soul care type practices and content. So these are wonderful apps to help you do that. In addition to that, are these daily liturgy podcasts and also Pete Scazzaro's Emotionally Healthy Leadership podcast. Fantastic resources. Want to encourage you to take full advantage of them. However, there's always a time when we just gotta go the extra mile, and that would be accessing something like this, a telecounseling through Centers for Ministerial Care. This is a great outreach of the Church of God denomination based out of Cleveland, Tennessee. It's interdenominational, it's ecumenical, it's fantastic clinicians that'll take your phone call, make an appointment with you, and you can begin telecounseling with that particular person. If you're looking for something more local, maybe you want to engage a counseling center such as this. Safe Harbor Christian Counseling is a counseling center in my area, and it's a great resource for me. I bet you've got one just like it in your area. However, if you want to take advantage of Safe Harbor, you can actually establish a telecounseling relationship with a therapist at Safe Harbor right here in the Delmarva area and a variety of other states in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. So please take advantage of these resources, and I know they're going to bless you. Here's an opportunity for you to access some videos. These are available at the MinistryOasis.com website, or you can just take their URL right now and go to them directly if you'd like. They are great for feeding your soul, the opportunity to be able to nurture yourself through videos such as this. Again, these videos are not going to help you break the next church growth barrier, because breaking the next church growth barrier is not going to fix your soul. Only stuff like this is. Just getting more growth is not going to make it all better. That's an illusion. In fact, it's a common ministerial delusion that if I can just get to the next level, if I can just break the 200, the 500, the 750 barrier, the 1,000 barrier, then I'll be okay. That's not accurate. You'll still be pouring out of an empty cup if you don't fill yourself with stuff like this. So please take advantage of these videos. This is an extraordinary time, so it's time for us to take extraordinary steps to secure the health and well-being of your soul and the soul of your family. When you do, when you take those extraordinary steps in extraordinary times to take care of your extraordinary soul and your family, then God will take extraordinary steps to secure the health and well-being of your church. Remember, it's not your church. It's God's church. Folks, He has got to have our back. When we turn to take care of ourselves, we can trust that He's got our six. He's got our back. Come on, Pastor. You know that you're likely in a position where you do need to step out of prevention into intervention and take good care of yourself. You, your family, your spouse, and your church will ultimately benefit from it. Pastor, God's got the coronavirus. And He's got you. He's got your church. You can count on God to have your back. We are Romans 8:28 people. We know that He is working all things together for the good of those who love Him, are called according to His purpose. And you, Pastor, you are called according to His purpose. And He's working all things together. It is a divine conspiracy, as Dallas Willard called it. Yes, it is. We can't see all the big picture, but you can do your part to stay healthy and well at this time of exceptional uniqueness and danger for the minister. We will always be greater than me. Come on, Pastor. You know you've got a friend, not only in Jesus, but a friend and so many other resources including ministryoasis.com. I love you. I love your work. I'm in it with you. May the peace of God rule your heart and mind by Christ Jesus. God bless you. Have a fabulous day.